That the only thing we have to fear is itself.
All right, so is everybody ready to go to Starcourt Mall? Everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Okay,
I got
all
my
right.
bike.
So
I got
first,
some
all right.
pocket change.
All right.
Let's do
So
it.
first off, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you once again to a very special season of hashtag TV Guideposts, wherein we are going to be going back to Hawkins, back to the AV Club, back to the arcade, and most importantly, back to Starcourt Mall, and hopefully not too deep into the Upside Down as we explore all together at our Those Foggin' 80s party, Stranger Things Season 3. Specifically this week, episodes 1 and 2 called Susie, Do You Copy? And The Mall Rats. Welcome to TV Guideposts. It'll sound a lot better when it's actually like, like done. Special. We'll fix it in post. We'll fix it in editing. Okay. So this is our first episode talking about Stranger Things in a few years. So I want to start off kind of by saying from Asia and Andy, actually, let's save that for when we actually get into the actual show. One of the things that as I was watching this that just made my heart soar, and it is probably my favorite thing whenever I watch any movie that is set in the 80s, is the big montage sequence where they go into Starcourt Mall in Hawkins. And it just fills my heart to overflowing because I have so many fond memories, more than I could possibly count, of spending time at the mall as a kid. And malls are still around, but they're different now because like online shopping has kind of taken over the world, and just the way that we engage it is so much different. So I wanted to kind of toss out there. Does anybody have any sort of specific fond memories of going and visit? And I'll start to give everybody time to think. But fond memories of going back to the mall. I have a very specific. It's odd that this would be what stands out for me, but I remember that when we would go to the mall, I would usually have like a route. I would go to the little directory. Remember the directory that would set up and it'd say like, oh, you are here, and these are all the different places. And it was like a puzzle grid that you had to find out exactly where the store was that you wanted to go to. And I would usually map out my route. I was like, okay, I'm going to hit up the bookstore right here, usually a Barnes and Noble. I'm going to hit the bookstore right there. I'm going to go up to the FYE, which was the four-year entertainment. That was, I would hit them up. I might swing back around to the Lifeway Christian bookstore, see what they've got going on. I would make my way all the way down through there. But I remember very specifically one time it was so happy for me. I had a little bit of, change in my pocket, a little bit of spending cash. And I would just meet my mom and dad back in the food court, where they would let me pick out whatever I wanted, usually Sbarro pizza. So I would go. Yeah. Oh, yeah. See, so basically, I would make my way around. But one time, I don't know why this memory stands out so much to me. I was at FYE, which is why I brought it up, and they have those little bins in FYE where there's just a bunch of cassette tapes. Anybody remember? Do y'all remember cassette tapes? Did y'all own cassette tapes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bro.
Okay. I'm just saying. So I'm sitting there browsing through, and these were specifically cassette tapes. I saw two right together of a band called Survivor. And one of the albums there was called Vital Signs, and the other one was called none other. And it had this fancy poppin', like severe close-up of the animal's face, but one of them was called Eye of the Tiger. And they were both $5 a piece, and I picked those up and plopped my money down. Had no clue. It was a blind buy. It was an utter blind buy. I had not seen Rocky 3, no context whatsoever. It was a blind buy, but I went and I bought, and the first time I put in Survivor's Eye of the Tiger, which was the first time I ever heard the dun, 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 and I mean, like, blew my mind, just absolutely blew my mind. And I'm sitting there, I'm in the car with my Walkman, and I've got my big old, Sony headphones on, and blasting Survivor's Eye of the Tiger. That was one of my favorite experiences. I was like, God, I love them all. I've come back with this raw treasure, and my mind is blown. And so
now, is it safe to say that these were singles and not full albums? Because that was a thing. Because it sounds like $5 for
no, they were
a full album in that era.
Well,
sounds
because
high,
remember,
or sounds low.
But remember, FYE sells used. And so I believe, fairly certain that these were used, but they were full albums. Vital Signs had 10 songs. Eye of the Tiger had 10 songs.
Gotcha.
I mean, like, and not only Eye of the Tiger, like, kicked the door down, but I'm Not That Man Anymore. Like, that was my jam for a while. Like, my, you know, the girlfriend in like 3rd grade, you know, like, who I was like, you know, that was a big deal. And then, you know, I had no idea what's
now.
Still trying to find that out. Still trying to find that out.
I just
Have you been listening
you know?
the last 4 years, Andy?
But you know, I had no idea what Silver Girl meant.
rhetorical?
You know, yes, it was rhetorical. but no, like, and one of my favorite songs, if anybody is curious about Survivor Beyond Eye of the Tiger, you got to hear from Vital Signs, which is the better album, but Eye of the Tiger is pretty great. But I Can't Hold Back and Everlasting, man, is pure 80s. Pull it up on whatever streaming service you're listening to right now. Survivor's I Can't Hold Back and Everlasting. I still remember buying those cassettes. Like that's how strong an impression it left on me. Is I can still remember picking up that Eye of the Tiger cassette. It was
little
a big deal.
Lackey.
So yes,
cassettes.
So I mean that was my fun reminiscence of it. Who else wants to share? If you have anything about, like, did you spend any time at the mall? Did you do anything fun?
Asia, Andy.
I mean, I definitely remember going to the mall a lot when I was a kid, because the mall where I grew up used to be, from my perspective, really, really cool. But if we're going to talk about it in Stranger Things terms, as I got older, it pretty much very quickly went to the upside down and has been a non-existent ghost area for many, many years.
Oh, wow.
But when I was a kid, it was everything. That was where everything was. And I think my biggest memories in that mall growing up was Christmas shopping. And there's something so nostalgic about going to, you know, there's always the big stores like Elder Behrman's or Sears or, you know, whatever the shops were at the time on either end of the store, and just kind of trailing behind your mom in the shopping cart, just listening to the music, not actually caring what you buy for anybody else. But I think that is probably the most potent memories I have at the mall, aside from, you know, the little milestones like getting your ears pierced at Claire's when you're 13.
Wow.
I don't have any 80s mall memories because that wasn't me.
Understood. Fair enough.
But Joe Exotic did come to our mall. That was one of the few very cool things that happened where I live. I did not get to go see Joe Exotic, but I saw the posters and I saw their van.
Oh my gosh.
And I live across the street from the guy who did all his tattoos. So anyhow.
Wow. But he did like a signing, or like he went by there, like...
tigers. He brought tigers to the mall. He did like one of those. If you watch Tiger King, the Orchards Mall in Benton Harbor, Michigan is on the map where they do all of the overlays there. So
oh my gosh, that is so crazy. And I'm amazed at how much tigers are coming up in this episode already. Like I love it so much. It was an accident.
Seriously.
Tiger King.
That's right.
Tony the Tiger. That's 80s.
Sure. That's right. They're great. Yeah, you gotta get it. You gotta get the
Tiger
Beat.
Tiger Beat. There you go. Wow. Nice. You read that a lot, didn't you, Andy?
No, how old do you think I am?
I don't know. I'm kidding. I did think if I didn't make it to the store to get the Super Mario Brothers shirt that I've got on right now, and everybody get in your 80s attire real quick so I can take your picture on the thing. Let us see it. Andy, there you go. Andy is posing as ET tonight. Yes, that's going to be an awkward picture, but that's awesome because that's the 80s. But I did forget what I was saying. Andy, go. The mall.
And the mall was where I used to go and like cruise for chicks, man. Like I would like psych myself up and I'd get like $20 and I was like, today is the day I'm gonna talk to a girl. And I don't think I ever spoke to a girl at the mall. But I would go. It would be like
but you had your $20.
I had my $20. I remember buying the Outcast CD.
Okay.
Oh boy. I worked at the mall. I worked at like, I found a loop. Well, I say it was a loophole. I was young. I was like 17, 18. And I was like, women's store have to hire men. And so I worked at Victoria's Secret and I worked at Wet Seal. And I was like,
I love the 80s.
they've gotta hire me because I'm a man, and if they
Sure.
don't,
They can't discriminate against you.
You can't discriminate. And the Victoria's Secret ladies were the nastiest ladies I've ever met in my life.
Oh no!
Okay.
Oh no!
Okay.
Not
No.
the customers, the ladies.
Sure. Yeah.
But I was surprised at the crudeness.
Oh wow!
I mean, says the guy who exploited the legal loophole to get a job there.
Either way,
Self-awareness.
Sure.
Self-awareness.
I did it. So
Right.
many fond memories of the mall. But I never met that special someone. It took me going to camp, but we're not talking about camp.
Oh no! But
Unless we talk about episode 1.
Oh, that's
We'll
right.
get-
Because
we'll get
Dustin,
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
because Dustin goes back
Master
to
of
it.
segues.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Nice.
That was deftly done. That was really
Well,
great.
I have a mall story here.
Wow.
I like the mall. That was fun. No, I worked at the mall as well at the old Christian bookstore and have lots of fond memories of the mall. And I exploited that loophole because these days they'd be like, I don't know about that, Nathan. Are you sure you want to work here? But actually, my fondest memories of the mall as a kid was much like the Stranger Things crew at the arcade. I've referenced it before, I think, on the show, but good pal growing up, Lucas Schaefer in Columbus, Georgia. We would go to Diamond Gyms on Sunday morning. His dad would load us up with a bunch of quarters and off we'd go for a few hours. It was a grand old time when that would happen. And then a few years later in high school, yes, worked at the mall. And I still get made fun of by my wife because I will still comment how whenever we're at the mall, I'm like, I sure do like the mall. It's a weird, I don't even really, I can't explain
It's
it.
safe.
Just
It's safe.
well, not really. I mean, we had a shooting at
Depends
one of
on
ours
the US.
about a year
Oh,
ago.
my
But
God.
yes. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But I mean, that's America. So what do we say?
Yeah.
Malls,
Here I was feeling
movies,
so
churches.
so elated
Yeah.
for a
Things
little-
were going
yeah.
great.
Yeah, so all of a sudden it's like reality
Yay,
comes crashing
malls.
down. Oh my
yes,
God.
yes.
Well, no, 'cause
Nonetheless, I have a
'cause I-
grand fondness for the mall. Yes, Reed.
Well, you just described this whole like, oh man, I love the mall. Like we did. So when things had started to decline a bit in terms of COVID cases and everything, we went and I was with my in-laws, and it was me, my wife, my son, and her parents, and we were just browsing around at their mall, which is a legit mall, but it's
What is an illegit mall?
the one where it's like a
strip
strip
mall.
mall.
Yeah,
Yeah, like a
right.
strip mall. It's like
That's
Yeah.
that's an illegit mall, but a
that's the
legit
illegit mall.
Yeah.
It's like,
Okay.
you go
Too
inside,
legit.
you have to have like at least 3 escalators. I don't know exactly what the rules are, but but yeah, just the fondness of just like I remember thinking, like, as I was walking, I was like, oh my God, I miss this. I love this. So just walking around, there's this little, I walk by a guy who's trying to sell me something that'll clean my phone, and I'm not interested, but I just keep moving right on down. And then all the little like stands for calendars and things like that. It's fun. It was just really enjoyable. And I picked up, I think, a couple of Schitt's Creek t-shirts while I was there that, I was just like, oh man, it's just fun to look around. Cause I think that's the thing is like, browsing things on the internet is not quite the same because there has to be a certain degree of like prompting. You have to be looking for something. I mean, yeah, you can go to a particular website and start to browse things, but I don't know. I just loved the discovery of the mall, the surprise of the mall. Like I'm going to stumble across something, either window shopping or I walk in, like something catches my eye, and there's just, it's not quite the same doing that anymore. And so, yeah.
Or you might stumble upon a transmission of a Russian recording in code, signaling other nefarious activities.
Speaking of deft segues. So we are here not just to talk about malls, but to talk about Stranger Things, episode 1 and 2. I will give you each a few moments to just talk about your general like fondness or not for Stranger Things. And since this is season 3, presumably you've seen 1 and 2 as well. Asia, I'm going to come to you first. What do you generally think about, like, where do Stranger Things sit in your imagination? Just like, oh, that's a show, or, you know, great fondness, or where does that sit for you?
I loved Stranger Things during my first interactions with it ever. I didn't see it until many, many months after the rest of the world had. I was very late to the party. And I think I was putting off watching it because I just didn't want to hop on the bandwagon. But then once I did, I was like, okay, I guess we're buckling in because I'm here for the rest of this, because
Right.
this is fantastic. So yeah, lots of fondness for the lore of the show. The characters obviously are just such wonderful sticking points for anybody to just latch onto and say, I love each and every one of you.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of fondness there for all of the seasons. I was surprised, if for some reason in my memory, I had it in my mind that I wasn't very fond of season 3. And then upon revisiting episodes 1 and 2 for this, I was like, I really like this. Why?
Awesome.
What was I thinking? This is great. I'm enjoying myself. What's going on?
There's a definite energy around. I had a similar experience watching these two, and I already knew my affection going into it was high, but in many ways, because I'd seen the show a couple of times, I thought like, oh, well, this will just be the box check. I'm going to refresh myself on the narratives. And then maybe 15 minutes into the first episode, I was like, oh my God, that music. I see, like Hopper and Mike and Elle are like trying to make out in the room and everything. It's just like, it's so much about the energy of the show. And like you said, the characters just begins to sort of enliven and energize me. Andy, what about you? Where does Stranger Things sit for you?
On the shelf.
Oh no. You just kind of tolerate it.
I tolerate it. I got into the first
on the
season.
shelf. That's nice.
What on the show? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just clever.
Good.
I appreciate it.
What can I say?
Yeah.
What can I say? I just couldn't get into the hype, like I just I was born in 1987, so I didn't get like the 80s like I sort of did, but I'm more of a 90s kid, so
Sure.
I just Stranger Things doesn't have that pow for
Sure.
me. It's just like here it is.
Oh, synth music.
Oh, wow.
Oh, John
guess we're
Carpenter
watching-
influence.
Yeah, I know. Who? Yeah.
What?
So, all right.
All right.
So
No.
it's been
So
really
come
fun
back
having you at the
when we
party.
get to Hellraiser. Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
get a
Go
drink.
refresh your drink at the
Yes.
party. I am the one who was so down on season 2 that I was worried going into 3 when I initially watched it, and I blazed through season 3 the first time in sort of the weekend watch, the viewing, and then my older kids in 2021, like maybe fall.
Okay.
It was during COVID era, but can't remember precisely when, got them into the show, which had an adverse effect because at least one of them became hyper obsessed to the point of annoyance, but that's a whole other thing. Nonetheless, rewatched the whole series with them and just recalibrated on 2 and rediscovered my love of 3. We did a whole family viewing of that, and even just rewatching these first 2 episodes, and I say this sincerely, whatever misgivings I have on 2, I completely abandoned for 3. I love the energy. I love the cast. I love the new characters. I love the interactions. I mean, even just, I think getting into specifics of the episode, I think the reintroduction and reacquaintance of Steve and Dustin is one of the most
Glorious.
joyous scenes in just about anything. It's so fun and so wonderful having those characters do their thing. And I love Joe Keery. I mean, they stumbled on something really special with him. David Harbour is just amazing. I don't know. I really, really have a fondness for especially season 3. I am apprehensive, if I'm perfectly honest, about what 4 might be. But I'm willing to go into it open-hearted and open-minded.
Sure.
But for the moment, as far as this goes, I'm all in.
Yeah, and I would agree too that, well, with each season, I remember, to your point, when season 2 ended, and I was out the gate an apologist for season 2. There were a lot of people who
I know.
Yeah. I mean, it really, it was taxing. But I remember, like, there were things about the boldness of them trying a couple of new things that I liked. And that's not to say that I thought everything worked wonderfully well, but I feel like I just really connected with several things that they were attempting that made it more endearing than I kind of expected. And so then when season 3 is, again, so energetic right out the gate, they recalibrate to some of the things that they had really captured from the first one with, okay, we're really going to embrace the 80s. Like, it doesn't really kick in until episode 2, but like that whole, like, spending so much time at the mall and just everything, again, feels very 80s. I will say about season 2 that season 2 felt like it was generally just set in the same town, and you have like a couple of things here or there that stand out, but it all takes place around Halloween. So that kind of, I don't know, it didn't quite feel as much like it was an 80s love letter. And then I think they recalibrated to put that back in. And I do think that, I was mentioning this to my wife, that I think that I would be curious. I think the show is objectively great for my opinion, but I do think it benefits a bit from timing, because I do wonder if season 1 were to drop, say, right now, or if season 1 were to drop during the pandemic, I wonder if it would have been the cultural phenomenon that it became. And that's not to take anything away from the quality of the show that I think is there, but I do wonder. Netflix produces so much now, and Stranger Things came out when they were not doing, I mean, any percentage of degree to what they're putting out right now. So they basically pumped a lot of marketing into, like, it's Stranger Things, and then it's the OA, and there were like a few other shows that they had kind of really
OA.
right, but they had really, like, the whoa. But and so I do wonder about that, because I think and again, that's not to say that I think Stranger Things is subpar. I genuinely love it, but I think the reason it caught on so profoundly, culturally speaking, is it benefited from when it came out as well, I think. So pointing to, we can dive in a little bit if you want, pointing to a couple of things. I figure maybe we can round robin if anybody has a couple of things that they specifically want to mention. I did want to call out, just because I'm a horror nerd and I only recently watched this movie like within the last 2 years, but the movie that they're watching in the theater is Day of the Dead, which is the second sequel to the original Night of the Living Dead by George Romero. And so that's the opening sequence of the third film in George Romero's Dead series, called Day of the Dead. The second thing I'll mention before I give somebody else the floor is, I do love, you mentioned David Harbour. Like, I love Harper as a character. Take apart everything that I said about, like, Stranger Things and its 80s love and everything. Like, I think Hopper is a genuinely interesting, genuinely well-rounded, David Harbour's performance as well. Like, I think that's a character that is strong regardless of the show he's in. A very interesting character. He's interesting because he is that sort of alpha male type, but he's got a legitimately big heart that is apparent in what he's doing. Like, he's doing what he's doing because he cares, but there's also a kind of an undercurrent of melancholy to everything that's happening. So I think, again, huge applause to David Harbour's performance, but I think Hopper is a particularly strong character by any objective standards from my point of view. Somebody else take the baton. Specifically, maybe if there's something in this first episode, Susie, do you copy that you wrote down or mentioned or can think of that you want to point out?
Oh, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. I love the idea of just like the girlfriend and
Oh,
talking
yeah.
to him or talking to her, and like maybe we all haven't been there, but like we've gone to camp and we've fallen in love, and we come back and nobody's gone to the same camp as us, and we're like, oh yeah, I met Susie at camp and we're gonna talk and it's gonna be so sweet, and everybody's like, no, you didn't meet a girl, look at you. And I was like,
It's like, and then I spent then that started this and that started that. I'm just kidding.
But just camp is very nostalgic for me, just because I met my wife at a camp, and I helped put on summer camps, and it's the second year we're missing our youth summer camp because many of you know I'm a youth pastor, and so we're missing it still just to be safe for COVID. But just I love summer camp love, and it's just so amazing. So
well, and you make an interesting point, Andy, because as poppy as the show is, they really find some emotional, kind of mileage out of some of those notes they hit about the growing relationships of the kids and the distance they're feeling. I'm thinking specifically of Will, his attempts to reestablish what is clearly lost in terms of the circle that existed, or at least the way it existed, and to your point about Dustin's maturation, despite being kind of still the clown, the growth he's experiencing that has, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, that has one of the most superb payoffs in just about anything, but but no, I'm with you. I really love how they reintroduce, because so often something like this could run the risk, and they often do, of your characters never move, that they just are static kind of entities. And so I do like, at least, that it's kind of like Lost. I don't know what that means, but there's life happening off screen for these characters, and I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Asia, what about you? Any specifics of these?
Yeah, you were about to say something.
Well, I think the main theme, and gosh, I hope this is episode 1. I think episode 1 and 2 kind of ran together for me. The whole sub narrative going on with Mrs. Wheeler and Billy. I believe that starts accumulating in episode 1.
It's in 1.
That whole sub narrative to me was so out of left field. When you first start watching it, you're like, what? Her Nancy's mom and this terrible person from season 2, like, how is this happening? But I kept, and I don't want to jump ahead in the pace of the podcast too quickly, but I caught up with Stranger Things after I had watched Hellraiser, and the beats that I just kept thinking about is the question of, well, how different were the decisions made between Mrs. Wheeler versus, like opportunities that were given to lead characters in Hellraiser, which again, I won't get there before we get there. But that really, really stood out to me this viewing of the struggle that this sort of disenchanted housewife kind of has to go through, and just I think in some sense it's kind of played up a lot for laughs and doesn't really end up going anywhere, but it really was a narrative that had such potentially catastrophic consequences had pretty much anything gone differently, given the fact that had Mrs. Wheeler and he actually met up versus had she just been on the same road as him that night trying to get to the same place. It's what a interesting little plot that doesn't ultimately end up panning out to anything, but that really, really at least took me for a ride this viewing.
Sure.
Well, I think you're illustrating too, though, one of the strengths of perhaps the overall show, but specifically season 3, not literally everybody, but they serve these characters really well. And the fact that you can take what, yes, is slightly out of left field, but have, for as little screen time as that arc actually gets, it packs a punch when it's present. I mean, what stops her is rather emotionally charged, and I love it.
Yeah.
And even that, if you recall, ahead of where we're at currently, but there is that arc is buoyed up later in the season with just their involvement at the carnival thing, the circle, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And point being, I'm with you. I think they serve her well, and the fact that steers, no pun intended, directly into the conflict of the whole season, which is Billy's being overtaken.
Yeah. Absolutely. One more thing I want to mention about that's more present in episode 1 before we move on to episode 2 is Joyce, obviously huge, abundant affection for Winona Ryder. She was one of the anchor points for me, the only real actor that I knew going into season 1. It was like, oh, Winona Ryder's in this. And I love that they've carried over some things about her relationship with Bob, Sean Astin, who died in season 2. And so much of what I love about it is I love the little touches that they've made. Things like they've drawn the little superhero Bob that they put on the fridge. She's sitting there having a TV dinner alone and remembering how they used to laugh about a TV show. That melancholy really digs in, and especially because the rapport she has with Hopper, I really appreciate the way the show in this early stage is handling that it's like, it's not just that she and Hopper, who are clearly friends and clearly close and clearly have gone through some things together, that they have a bond. And clearly also he has some feelings for her that he wants to try to explore, but she's still, I just like that they didn't just write Bob off, that it wasn't just like, oh, he was the cameo appearance for season 2 and now is sort of summarily dispatched. I like that they tried to do a couple of things to show exactly how she's coping and kind of trying to move. I just really like that growth for that character, which is more highlighted in episode 1 than it is in episode 2.
Yeah, there's a lot of really, the grief there is really tangible, and it's really powerful.
No, I absolutely agree. So if we didn't have anything more on that, episode 2 is called The Mall Rats, and we're not going into a lot of plot details in this, but fundamentally in episode 1, we find our characters. We mentioned Dustin is back home from camp, and the kind of the crew is all reunited. They've got Mad Max part of the team now, and everybody's kind of joining together, but Mike and Elle are officially sort of dating. But in episode 1, Hopper kind of puts a kibosh on that. He doesn't like where that's heading, and he gives Mike the threatening dad talk, so Mike backs right off. But when he backs off, of course, Elle, who her experiences throughout the entire show have been completely unlike any other child, not only because of her supernatural abilities, but just her experience growing up in the lab and everything. So there's a very specific way in which she understands trust in the world. And so one of the things core is friends don't lie. Like, do you lie? Friends don't lie. Like, lying is like one of the worst possible things in Elle's mind that you can do to her. So when Mike, under threat of Hopper beating him up or doing whatever, lies to her about his Nana, then that sends her into the, she's going to break up with him. She runs off with Max to the mall, where we spend probably 2/3 of this episode is just in them running around the mall, which is pure delight. But
your mom called. It's your grandma. He's not okay. I love David Harbour so much.
And I love that you can see him in real time crafting them. He's like, your mom, and like, like you could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. It was really, really funny.
Have any of you ever had the dad talk or the mom talk with somebody that you're potential, like Harper had with him, of us, like, you hurt my daughter, I'm gonna kill you? Like, has anybody ever,
I feel it
happened to you?
But haven't had to do it yet.
You haven't had to do it? Like, before?
Oh, I had it done to me.
Yeah.
What did you have done to you?
My high school girlfriend's dad had the talk with me.
Wow.
But he was weird. Like, he was straight up weird. He worked the 3rd shift, and I kid you not, he requested that his entire family sleep through the day and stay awake with him at night. And well, yeah,
that's not weird. That's deranged.
And so like when I started seeing his daughter, it was like just the whole dynamic was a bit odd. And
you sure it's not like a let the right one in sort of scenario?
Right, like you escaped a horror movie.
Maybe I did. Maybe I did. I'm just saying. Maybe
Reed's
it's
life
for
just
the
got so
best.
much better realizing that. He's like, wait,
oh man,
that's amazing.
Hallelujah. That's so. But no.
Did somebody's mom like take you aside and this is my baby? Like you don't hurt him or her, until.
Yeah, moms don't tend to have those talks as much. My dad was the exact opposite of any of that, though. Like my mom was more the one to be a little bit like that. But whenever I would tell my dad, like, hey, so and so wants to like date me, he's gonna come ask you if he can date me, he'd be like, why? Like they're gonna date you, not me. Like that.
Oh wow.
I mean, to illustrate this point a little bit, when we were doing the family watching of season 3, there were chuckles in the room at my expense because of how resonant my family knows those Hopper scenes are. And I'm like, yeah, I'm with you, bro. Like, I haven't had to deal with that yet, but thank you, COVID.
Here it goes.
We've all been in the house for a year, and there's been none of that whatever happening.
Oh my god!
But I do, I worry about me during those times. I did want to throw out, dadgummit. Oh, I wanted to add one more to the mix here that's relevant to all of it. Is Reed, you mentioned Winona Ryder and just the casting in general. Of course, we get Carrie Elwes as Larry the Mayor, but I mean, is there a better addition writ large than Maya Hawke as Robin? I mean, she is so great in this season, and I have increased affection for that family, specifically after Good Lord Bird, which she also shows up in throughout. So just really fun addition to the gang here.
I do love the new characters, like you mentioned. And I have one more thing that I'll mention if nobody else does, but I want to sort of give the floor before we, sort of round this out and move on into our next film. Does anybody else have anything either specifically about episode 2, about these first pair of episodes, or something about Stranger Things that you haven't mentioned that you want to? If not, I'll wrap off with my thing and we'll move on. But anything? No?
I do.
No? Oh,
I mean, one of the touch points of the whole series is its excellent music selections, and few are as well selected and timed as Cold as Ice from The Police when Eleven dumps Mike. That is a great moment.
It was wonderful. It was
So
really
good.
wonderful. I was thinking that this particular, like the first couple of episodes, they really pull out, like they are starting strong with some of their big, recognizable 80s song, like I Just Died in Your Arms Tonight. And they're really going
Is that in
for
this episode? These two?
Well, yeah. It's when Mrs. Wheeler is putting on the makeup and daydreaming about Billy.
That's a great song.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is a great song. What we didn't mention before we leave is just the primary threat. So it's easy to forget because these first couple of episodes set the stage so well about these great characters, these great character relationships, that this is ostensibly still a horror show. And the primary threat here, at least what we know about it, is Billy, who we mentioned earlier. He was an absolute tool in season 2. But in this one, he has been sort of sucked in by this entity whose intentions and motives we don't know yet, but there's this severe infection. And what we know about it is he's been sent to sort of bring in others to try to get copied and infected as well, maybe duplicated, maybe just infected themselves. That one shot in episode 2 where Mrs. Wheeler is trying to check on him, and it looks and you think for a second he just turns around. Yeah, just turns around and slams her head against the wall. It's just an illusion. But that I forgot that moment and jumped straight up out of the chair when I was watching it. But we still don't know entirely very much about it, except oh god, the rats. The rats are all swarming to it and then popping like popcorn. It was just it's really, really. So we'll learn more about that threat as time goes on. But if everybody's okay, we'll draw to a close. We all good? Are we ready for? So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time now. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. It's time to exit the mall, and you have to make your purchases, make your way to your counter, and just pick up your items and then leave. And we'll see you back here next week, and as a matter of fact, when we have yet another 80s party and we revisit Stranger Things season 2, this time for episodes 3 and 4. We'll see you right back here next week. Hopefully not in the Upside Down, but hopefully very, very much in all things Starcourt and Hawkins at #TV Guideposts.